Otho, please be seated.
Ms. Thomas. Thank you. Tēnā koutou I ngā kai komihana o te rā. Tēnā koutou e te whare. Ko Ruth Thomas, tōku ingoa. Would now call the first witness, Hake Halo.
Talofa, Hake. And welcome to your two important support people here. Before we start, oh, and there's more than two. We have four support people. Welcome to you as well. Before we start, I'm just going to ask if you would take the affirmation. Is that all right? Hake, do you solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence you will give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. I'll leave you with Ms. Thomas, with Ruth.
Thank you. And just to introduce some of the people seated with Hake today, we have Tingi Lau Ness seated next to Hake as a live translator if necessary, and we have Oliver Sutherland also seated with Hake as his supporter, along with his partner and Whike to support today.
Thank you. I'm only going to say this once, remembering that everything you're saying is being typed up by the stenographer and signed by our very good signers here. If you could just remember not to go too fast so that they can catch every important word that you are saying. Thank you.
Hake, can you tell the commissioners your full name, please?
My full name is Hake Halo.
Thank you. And before we start on the main part of your evidence today, Hake, would you like to start off with a verse from Philippians? It's at paragraph 4 of your statement.
It says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Now, Hake, that verse was a verse that you had written in a journal that you kindly showed me when I met with you. Do you have that journal with you today?
Yes, I have.
And that journal, I think you told me you've kept that journal since the 1990s. What have you used that journal for?
I just use it for my notes that I use for informations for my Hake Halo's notes.
Right. So since the 1990s, you've been keeping a journal of everything that you've thought of in terms of Hake Halo, the people you've met, the impacts it's had on your life.
Yes, appointments and on everything, phone calls and all sorts.
Would you like the commissioners to see your journal and have a look at that over the lunch break and then return it to you today?
If they would like to, yes, I don't mind.
I might ask the registrar to take that journal from Hake now to provide to the commissioners.
Thank you for that. We would be honoured to take that, and we will take good care of it and return it to you.
Now, Hake, I'm going to ask you some questions about your early life, and the first one is, can you please tell us where you were born?
I was born in Niue Island, my homeland.
And who raised you?
My parents until about three or 4 months, and my grandparents adopted me in the island way of adoptions.
So your grandparents adopted you when you're around 3 or 4 months old, and in the course of your evidence today, when you refer to your mother, are you referring to your grandmother?
Yeah.
Because your grandmother and your grandfather raised you as their own.
Yes.
How was your health when you were a young baby?
It was all right, but I was a sick child when I was small with epilepsy.
And how old were you when you came to New Zealand with your mother and father?
I'd say I was about 5 years old then, because of my sister. I remember it for my sister's birthday when she was born.
When you arrived in New Zealand with your mother and father, what languages could you speak at that time?
Can't speak any language, only my mother tongue. Anyway,
You started primary school at the Richmond Road School in Ponsonby?
yes it is.
And how did you find that school?
Was pretty hard. I didn't know anything, couldn't do anything, couldn't understand any language, what was going on or what was being taught because of the language.
Then you went to the Grey Lynn Primary School?
Yes.
And how did that school go? Did that improve or get worse?
Still the same as I reckon, getting, but not too bad as like the first one.
Then I think you made a comment in your evidence that you were still not talking because you didn't know the language. You were transferred to Beresford Primary,
Yeah,
and there you were put into a special class.
yes.
Why was that?
Mainly my behavior, or as well as they noticed that I wasn't a healthy child at the time.
Was there an incident at the Beresford Primary School on a day when there was a relief teacher in charge of your class?
Yes, there was.
Can you tell us what happened on that day?
As far as I can remember, we were practicing songs. Oh, yes. And while I wasn't singing properly, just trying to sing, but not pretty good, and not participating properly. And my teacher got upset for not listening, so she came and took me out of the classroom.
Where did she put you?
Outside of the class, and locked the door.
How did you feel when you were locked in a different room?
Well, I was pretty scared because it was dark, the alleyway there that leads up to the stairways, up to the top classes, but it was pretty dark and I was scared.
So what did you do?
I was trying to enter back into the classroom and I was pushing hard on the door to try and let myself back in, but the door was locked.
Did you manage to get out?
No. I was still pushing on the door, just mainly crying and trying to get back in.
What happened to your hand as you were pushing on the door?
As I was pushing, I was just sort of forcing it like that, and then pushing. But then finally, I actually pushed on the wrong part, where there was the thin glass, and my hand was like that, and it went through the glass, and it was cut severely.
So your hand was cut and you were taken to the Auckland Hospital,
Yes,
and you were not taken back to Beresford Primary School after that incident?
no.
And is it after that incident that teachers or people perceived you as being violent?
Well, yes, how can...
And then a notice came through to your parents to say that you were going to be put in the St John's Psychiatric Hospital.
Yes.
Do you know why you were to be admitted to the psychiatric hospital?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe because of what happened at school, I suppose.
Right. Did you stay at the St John's Psychiatric Hospital for very long?
I was there for a while, yes, but my parents wasn't happy,
They tried to get you out?
and they tried to remove me, yes.
And I think with the help of, was it Reverend Talagi, that
Yep.
they got you out of that psychiatric hospital?
Yes.
Where did you go once you got out of there?
Just went home, and then, yeah,
Did you go for a trip back to Niue
yeah,
briefly?
yes.
When you came back from Niue, so this was in March of 1973, and you started back at school again, what happened to your dad at that time?
He was pretty ill at the time, and not long when we returned, he passed away.
And you were quite close to your father?
Yes, and I was pretty upset about that.
And how did you cope with losing him in terms of your behaviour at school?
Well, was pretty hard.
I think at that time you started at Kōwhai Intermediate?
Go for Newton Central.
Right. And at this new school, were you also put into a special class?
No,
No?
no. Kōwhai, I was in the special class at
Right.
Kōwhai.
And did anyone speak to you about why you were put into a special class at Kōwhai?
No. First, there was a special language class, but because of my misbehaving or the way I was playing with the children, that's when they put me into a special class, changed the class. Because they say that I was abusing the kids in class. But it's my friends in class when we're playing. It was a game of dodgeball.
A game of dodgeball?
Yes, that you have to put the kids up on the front, on the wall, and just throw the ball, and the kids will dodge.
Right.
If that ball hits the child, that one comes down and you go up. But they say that I was abusing the children, the handicapped children at that time. But it was my own friends, because I was in a special class at that time.
So you got in trouble for playing what you were the dodgeball game in that class?
Yes.
And is that when you were then moved into another school? Was it Avondale Intermediate?
Yeah. I was transferred to live with my parents at that time.
How was your mum coping with your behaviour at that time?
Well, pretty hard, because I was at that time mixing with friends and all that sort of thing.
I think it was from Avondale Intermediate that you were expelled from school there.
Yes.
How old were you then?
74, 75.
Were you 12?
12, 13,
12?
yeah.
You've said that at that time you were playing up a little bit with your friends and you
Yes.
actually did some shoplifting and you ended up in the youth court.
Yes.
After your appearance in the youth court, where did the judge say that you had to go? Where were you sent after that?
After a few warnings that the judge gave me, I was just, as far as I can remember, put into the boys' home,
And what boys' home was that?
Owairaka.
Wairaka. So this was in October of 1975.
Yeah, around here.
How was Wairaka? How did you find that?
Well, it was pretty hard, pretty strict in that.
And how were the staff? when you were there?
Staff was pretty strict in controlling us, making sure everything's done properly and all those kind of things.
When you first arrived at RCOIAIC, were you put in a secure room?
Yes, I was.
Was that for a number of days?
Yeah.
During your time at RCOIAIC, a decision was made by a medical officer that you would be sent to Lake Alice. Were you
Yeah.
given any information about Lake Alice? Did anyone tell you what Lake Alice was?
As far as I remember, no, I didn't know anything, what's going on.
Do you know whether anyone told your mother and father about Lake Alice or what kind of place it was?
Well, when I made inquiries when I came back out, because I was trying to find information for my book. I asked all of them, and if anybody came in and asked anything or any information, they just told the same story. That they were told that they were just taking me to a school there. Nothing saying that they were taking me to a psychiatric hospital. It's only to take me to a school to learn or teach my ways or whatever. Nothing else about psychiatric.
So your family understood that you were going to Lake Alice because it was a school. At the time that you were at RCOIAIC, were you a state ward at that stage? Or was that later?
I think it's later.
Right. How did you get to Lake Alice? How did that travel, that journey happen?
It was through my social worker that came to the boys' home, which made arrangements with my parents as well to be there, so that he can take us, as far as I can remember. Take all of us take up my mother and father and grandmother as well.
But on the day that you were to be taken to Lake Alice, did your social worker take you to the airport and your family weren't there in time? Is that
Yeah.
what?
That's what happened. And he couldn't wait. Just had to go. Because I don't know why.
So when you're at the airport, you didn't get a chance to say goodbye to your family?
No. He just said it's time to go into the plane. So we went in and waited in the plane there.
From the plane, were you able to see your family?
Yes, I was.
And were they trying to wave at you from the airport?
From the airport, yes.
How old were you at that time?
76.
Were you 13 at that stage?
Oh, 75.
So 13 years old.
Yes.
When you arrived at Lake Alice, what was your first impressions when you...
It's just that the place looked different to me. It looks like, it doesn't look like a school, like how they said.
Right. So you were
Just
surprised?
big white buildings, tall buildings, all along the driveway. It does seem a bit scary, but wow.
And you were taken to one of those buildings, I think it was Villa 7?
Yes.
Was that a two-storey building?
Two-story, yes. All two-story buildings.
And that first week at Lake Alice, what did it feel like? How did it compare with RCOIAIC?
Well, the good thing about it is that we're not locked in on that place, unless us kids will be playing around or doing something stupid or being naughty or something with one another, misbehaving or whatever. That's when we will be locked in a special room, in our bedrooms, our sleeping dormitory, sorry.
So there were some dormitories upstairs in that Villa 7, and there was also a room that you could be locked up in if that's what the staff did to you?
Yes. There's 4 lock-up rooms upstairs on each side. 2 each side, sorry.
When you arrived at Lake Alice, were you given some medicine right from the outset, different types of medication?
No, no medicines.
Right.
As far as I remember.
During the course of your time at Lake Alice, did you receive some ECT?
Yes.
I'd like to ask you a bit about ECT now. But first, just to ask, did you ever have a meeting or a consultation with the psychiatrist at the Lake Alice before you had any ECT, so Dr. Selwyn Leeks?
No.
So when was the first time that you met Dr. Leeks?
Just on that day, I think.
Can you tell us what it was like on the first day that you received ECT?
My name was just called from the dormitory, from the lounge, sorry. And I just came out to the person who called. I can't remember who it was, but he's one of the male staffs. And just followed it. He just said, come with me. And I just followed him.
Did you know what was about to happen?
No, I don't. Just followed him upstairs. Because he just told me, just follow me. Just come with me. And so I just followed. Without knowing what was going to happen. Still, when I got up there, I still don't know what is this. But it's all prepared, everything's prepared upstairs. The staff members up there, he was up there, Dr. Leeks.
And were you put on a bed in this room? And then what happened?
That's when they put the electrodes on my head. And next minute, well, I just woke up, because I just was knocked out without feeling anything at that time.
So the first time you received the electrodes on your head, you were knocked out instantly, so made unconscious.
Yes.
So you didn't feel anything at that time?
No. Just fall into a deep sleep.
Once you woke up from that episode of ECT, did you then have another episode of ECT or electrodes being put on your temples?
Mm.
And what was that incident like?
Well, that one was pretty bad. I didn't know that was going to be like that. I thought it was just the same thing when I went up, just the same way.
And was it the same or was it different this time?
It was different.
How was it different?
I'd say it was really painful.
Can you describe for us what happened? Was it Dr. Leeks in the room?
Yes, he was there.
Did he put the electrodes on your temples?
Yes, the same thing. He had to, there's another thing that he does is always had to wet it. Wet the ends of the pads of where they put on their head.
Right.
With water.
So he wet the electrodes and then put those on your temples?
Yeah.
And then
But
what
I
was...
thought it was just going to be the same kind of thing. Same like before. But when I started feeling funny, the way the actions are taken, the way the person is looking, I asked him, is it going to be painful? And he said, yes, it is. So I told him, well, I don't want it. Please, I don't want it. Because I can see the way he's looking. It's all written on his face. Something is not right here. But he said, sorry, mate, I'm just going to have to, you're just going to have to go through with it, or I'm just going to have to do it. So he put me on. I was crying my eyes out at that time. I said, well, if it hurts, you know, on the first time, I don't want it. But he just seemed to take no notice. And that's when he put it on and put the mouth guard in. I'll be thankful for that mouth guard, yes, because explaining it by the feeling without a mouth guard, the person will end up biting his tongue off if it wasn't for that. As well as the pain that was so bad that the person was lying down. When they turned it on, I can feel myself actually sitting up, or not all the way up, or I can't remember how far, but your body is off the bed, your arms are up the front, but it's, or you're straining to finger arms, but they're holding you down. And it turned it off. That's when you fall back down, you're crying, but because of the mouth guard, well, and he turns it back on again. And it goes on, or whatever, until you're knocked out. That's when it stops. But the pain, I'll explain the pain is the way I explained it. It's just like what I said in the first time, being hit by a sledgehammer on your head, the feeling. That's how bad I'll explain it.
And you felt that pain when the machine was turned on, came up off the bed, and then it was turned off again? Yes. How many times did that happen, the on and off?
I'd say it mainly till the person is knocked out.
So more than once?
3 or 4 or even more. The person is always screaming his head off and that. And
you said that people were holding you down. Who were they?
Just the staff members there. The ones that are with us all the days. Because Dr. Leeks is not there all the time. He only comes to do the ECT part, and then will come and visit one day and he's gone. It just depends on the reports of on our folders or whatever. Or from the staff members, and just do whoever he wants with the punishments of the electric shock.
So, in your mind, was this type of ECT or this type of electrodes on your temples, was this a form of punishment?
I'd say yes, it is.
And how did you find the first occasion when you did have ECT, when you didn't feel the pain, what did you think that was for?
Well, I say that's a treatment then, because you can't feel anything. You just fall asleep.
During your time at Lake Alice, how many times did you receive ECT as a treatment that you can remember? Or was it just the first time?
Certainly about two times.
And from then on, whenever you had the electrodes on your temples, did you remain conscious and could feel the pain?
Yes.
Until a point where you might eventually be knocked out? In terms of this use of the electrodes on your temples, how did you feel afterwards, once you've gone through this pain and then were knocked out? How was your body feeling after all of that?
The body's all right.
What about your head?
But the head is, you all seem to be all dazed and confused or all that sort of thing.
You've said that staff were there, Dr. Leeks was there. Was anyone else in the room when you were receiving these shocks to your temples that you can remember?
Nobody's allowed upstairs at that time. It's only them allowed. But us kids, we do know that somebody's always getting ECT because you can hear the screams from upstairs coming downstairs to us kids in the lounge, in the sitting room, TV room. You can hear them screaming.
Right.
Even the workers there that are working around there, they can hear it. And they're doing their jobs and crying at the same time. Because they know what's going on.
Your medical records show that you did receive ECT unmodified, so that means with no anaesthetic, no relaxants, twice in 1975 and 5 times in 1976. So that's a total of 7 times. Do you think you actually received that form of electrodes to your temples more often than that?
I'd say it's more often.
Can you tell us about a grade system at the villa? A grade system? Was there a system operating where children would get an A, B, C or D?
Yes.
How did that work? If someone got 2 Ds or 3 Ds, what would happen to them?
It's just a behaviour chart of ours that they did themselves to sort of mark our way of behaving. If we're not behaving properly at that day in the ward or even in the school, in doing our jobs and not listening and fighting and all those kind of things, we'll get if we behave good like that, we'll get an A if our behavior is good in that day. If we're not listening or something like that, it's a B. If we're, well, the report might be not good at coming from school or something like that, or from the staff, or that if they see us do one mistake, might be a C. But we got to try and avoid the D part.
Right. So what would happen if you got a D or a few Ds?
We got to try and get it, because if we get a D that day, we have to go to bed at 7. And no lollies or chocolates or whatever, if that's right. But if we get a 4 Ds, that's either paraldehyde or the ECT, if I'm right on that. I'm not sure.
Right.
But it's one of those like that. That's how we've got to try and avoid of getting 3 Ds. Not to get it, otherwise a beating or whatever.
So multiple Ds could end up in a beating or paraldehyde or maybe ECT?
Yes.
So you've mentioned paraldehyde. What was that like?
Well, paraldehyde is just like another way of giving us a hiding, the way I see it, but using that injection. It is painful. It is bad. The pain. The child is walking like a pregnant lady sometimes, swaying from side to side. With his pants coming out of the sick bay, still halfway down, crying his eyes out. And that's only for 5 cc's, if that's right, about that much. They're always using that much to punish us for whatever we're doing. But it's like using it for us instead of giving us a hiding with their hands.
So who would give you this? Was this the nurses?
The staff members themselves. That means There's only two that I can remember that uses as much as the two staff that are mainly there, the main ones.
When you were given this paraldehyde, it was an injection,
It's an injection.
and it was normally given in your bottom.
Yes, up on the lower back part here.
After having that injection, you said it was difficult to walk. You're
So do,
waddling around.
yes, because of the pain on your back. You can't move. It takes a while for you. You can't even sit down. For how long? About half an hour or so. You have just have to stand up. And
You said you would get this instead of the staff giving you a hiding. Why would you get, what sort of thing would make you then be given a injection of paraldehyde? What sort of behaviour?
just misbehaving. I even get it for just laughing my head off with having too much fun with the friends.
So you got paraldehyde for being too loud with your laughter.
Yes.
While you were at Lake Alice, were you ever put in the secure room? You've mentioned there were some lock-up rooms.
Yes, I was.
And what sort of behaviour would mean that you'd be put in that room?
Just like I said before, not listening or fighting or whatever with the kids, with our friends, or whatever mistake you made or behaviour you've done, wrong behaviours.
Did you ever try and run away from Lake Alice?
I felt it, yes, but that's another problem with the kids when they'll always go for the police and give false information about it. But that's why us kids run away in those days. But they always ring the police and tell the police that he's just, watch out for him, he's not very normal or whatever. Lies they give him. Then the police, even though they tell them, that's why they're running away. But they don't believe the kids. They just bring them back because of the bad reports they already sent through to the police.
When these kids were brought back to Lake Alice, what would happen to them when they got back?
Locked up and wait for the ECT time.
So the kids that ran away would then get ECT. Whereabouts would they get ECT if they were running away? Whereabouts on their body?
Mainly on their legs.
When we say ECT in that context, what are you actually talking about? The electrodes from the ECT machine?
Yes, it is.
And they were put on these children's legs?
Yes.
And do you know what happened when they were put on their legs?
No, I don't, because we're not, like I said, we're not allowed up there at that time. We only know it when the person itself tells us.
So did the children...
They got it on their legs.
When you say they got it on their legs, are you meaning an electric shock?
Yes, it is.
And the other children would tell you that?
Yes. The ones that got it.
When you were at Lake Alice, were you able to communicate with your family?
No, only through the letters. Letter writing.
Did you write some letters to your mum?
Yes, I did.
Did you write those letters in English or in Niuean?
The first time when I was there, I wrote it in Niuean because I didn't understand what we have to do about that kind of part. Until the boys, a few boys have to explain it to me, that we're not allowed to do that.
Why were you not allowed to do that?
Well, they said that I have to write my letters in English, and don't forget not to seal my letters when we put it in the envelope. just take it into the office and leave it open like that for them to see.
Why did it have to be left open in the office before it would be posted?
So they can read it first before they send it.
So did you continue to write your letters in English
Yes,
to your mum?
I have to.
At some point, did you also start drawing some stick figures in your letters to your mum?
Yes, I did.
And what did you do with those stick figures? Did you include some speech bubbles?
Well, I did, because I was pretty angry at what was going on with that ECT thing. And I was trying to find a way of getting the message out to my parents and letting them know what was going on.
So,
And finally, one day it came to my mind how to do it. It was just an understanding of how to do the way to get it out. That first I write it in my letter in English that everything is all right and this and this and this. My school I've just finished and all that like that. But in the end, I had to draw a happy face. And I first did it in a straight line to see if it'll get out, if they will respond to their part. And when they respond, that's when I started doing it in a happy face.
right.
And told them about it.
So you drew the stick figures with happy faces so that they'd get out, be sent out. What did you write in the speech bubbles?
I wrote that just a short few words in the vein, like saying, "Mum, electric shock, so painful to me."
And can you see a picture on the screen in front of you?
The screen's not
Oh,
Or Hake, can you see the screen over by Oliver's shoulder? Up on the
or,
wall?
or even across. Can
on.
you?
We have one.
You got one now?
What are we looking at in that picture there? Is that a stick figure picture that you have drawn?
No, I won't do it in that, not that one. That's just one of my ones I was practicing.
From your journal?
Yeah.
And in the speech bubble, you can see is that your green handwriting?
It is my heart, yeah.
Can you see that clearly? Can you read that out to us?
Mum, mami, whakasoka he whaoao, moi huki au, mamahi, tangi au.
What message were you passing on to your mum in that speech
Means-
bubble?
Mum, the people have given me electric shock, as well as like the St. Parada injection, and it's painful. I am crying,
Right.
like I am in pain.
Okay. So this is a picture that's come from your journal, but at the time you drew pictures like this and sent them in the letters to your mum?
It's supposed to be, I was going to do it like that, but I thought, no, I better not do it like that, because they'll catch me out.
So you put
I'll
a
get
smiley
caught.
face.
So I did it, changed it, and put it in a smiling face instead.
And did your mum, did she receive the letter?
Yes, she responded back.
And what did she say?
She said to tell them to stop it.
Were you able to tell anyone that? At
I
Lake Hill?
was able to tell, but I didn't tell. Otherwise, I'm scared they will say, well, how did your bloody mother know? And I'm scared that's when they might take me back up and give me more
So you get more
ECT.
electric shocks.
Yes.
Thank you. You can probably take that down now. Hake, I'm going to ask you about what happened after your first, you were at Lake Alice for a certain amount of time and then you went home for the Christmas break?
Yes.
When you got home and out of Lake Alice for that break, how did it feel to be at home?
It was a good relief, and I was happy that I'm back home.
When you were back home over that Christmas break, so this was in January of 1976, you were at home for that period and you were asleep in your bedroom.
Yes.
And in the bedroom next door to you was your sister.
Yes.
And you were in that room when your sister was murdered.
Yes.
And you were the first person that ran into her room.
Yes.
And you found your sister, she'd been murdered by her boyfriend. She was holding her baby at the time.
Yes.
And you were just thankful that her baby was still alive.
Yeah.
At that time, your sister was 19 and you were 14.
Yeah.
I think you've said in your statement you felt alone, you had no support and no one to speak to.
Yeah.
And it made you upset and you got into more trouble.
Yes.
When you went back to Lake Alice, just a few weeks after that, were the staff there, the nurses, Dr. Leeks, did they know what had just happened in your family?
I think they do, yes.
So they were made aware that your sister had just been murdered?
I'm sure they, yeah.
Did they offer you any support, any counselling?
No.
When you got back into Lake Alice at that time, you've said you were upset and your behaviour got worse.
Yes.
So you'd just gone through this at home. You came back, your behaviour was worse. Did you then get more electric shocks?
I'd say that's all together, yeah.
And more ECT or electric shocks than you'd had ever before?
If I'm playing up and all that. Only one person that knows about it was also my teacher in the classroom that I really trusted.
And was that your teacher, Anna Natush?
That's right.
So you trusted her?
Yes.
Were you able to talk to her about what had just happened with your sister?
Yeah.
Was she able to support you?
Big support and big help.
What did she say to you or to encourage you?
Mainly just encouraging me to not to give up hope and to keep on doing my things in good behaviour and all that, so I can get back out. Because this place is not the place for you. You don't belong in here.
Were you able to complain to any other staff about what was happening?
No, I don't trust anybody.
So in August of 1976, you did get out of Lake Alice. You were discharged.
Yes.
You were 14 years old, and you went back to your parents. How did you feel when you got out of there?
Big relief.
At that time, did your mum, did she go to the lawyers to try and arrange to adopt you, to legally adopt you?
Yeah.
Was there an interpreter at that meeting with the lawyer?
I'm not sure, I don't think so.
At that meeting, are you aware that that was the first time your mum was actually told that you had been made a state ward?
Yeah, that's when she first found out about it.
So previously the court had made you a state ward, but no one had told your mum what that was in a language that she could understand.
No.
So it wasn't until she was seeking some legal advice to adopt you that she had this explained to her. Did you go back to school when you got out of Lake Alice?
No.
How was your epilepsy when you got out of Lake Alice? You've mentioned that you experienced seizures when you were a young child.
Well, after a while, it started coming back.
And this is after you got out from Lake Alice?
Yes. I was in Three Kings then.
Sorry?
I was living in Three Kings at that time when it first started.
Getting worse again? Is this a time when your brother rang you up to ask if you would like to go to church with him to get some prayers for healing?
Yes. Yeah.
And is that what you did?
Yes.
And throughout that period and since that time, have you found your faith has helped you recover and get through the impact of Lake Alice?
Yes.
Do you have your statement in front of you?
Yes, I have.
At paragraph 77 of that statement, is there a prayer that you've got at that paragraph that you'd like to read to the commissioners? That's at paragraph 77.
Yeah. Yeah. That one?
Would you like to read that, Hake, to the commissioners? Or speak?
My faith has really helped me move on from what has happened to me and continues to help me. I pray often. I would like to refer to part of a prayer I wrote in my diary in January 2007. Heavenly Father, in Jesus' name, who is and will be always be my healer and my Savior, and there is no one else to be. I just come before you and thank you for all the blessings you have granted unto me.
Thank you, Hake. And since going to that church to seek some healing, have you now become an elder in that church?
I am an elder, and I'm the main oldest one in there now.
Right. Now, you've told us you did not get to go to school when you got out of Lake Alice,
Yeah.
but sometime after Lake Alice you were then put in another institution. It was Carrington Hospital.
Carrington,
What was that like?
well, it seems to be the same as Lake Alice.
Was there ECT? Did you receive ECT? Did you receive paraldehyde?
Once.
What happened when you were given paraldehyde?
I think I was not well at that time,
Is that when you,
but with me and the person that gave it, the nurse that gave it, things are not good with me and her in there.
and
We
you,
seem to disagree, have a lot of disagreement with things. So I don't know why I was given that from her.
but you managed to get out of Carrington and you didn't have to go back there?
Yeah.
Can I ask Hake a question? Sure. Hake, you say you and the staff member, you didn't get on well.
Yeah.
And did you lose your temper to her
Sometimes, yes, when we argue.
when you were arguing?
Yeah.
And was that when you got the paraldehyde?
On the time when I was not well, not feeling well.
Right.
Yeah.
So was it a treatment for you, do you think?
Oh, well, I don't know if
No.
it's a treatment or...
Okay. And what was it like? Was it the same as at Lake Alice? Was it still painful?
Yeah, the pain, that's how I take it, because of the same kind of pain that I felt.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
That's why I took it like that, it's a paranoid. But I don't know, I might be wrong.
Oh, so it was just because of the pain,
The pain was
that you
so-
thought it must be paraldehyde?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
And the same taste of the smell that came out of the mouth.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that.
That's right.
Hake, I'm going to ask you some questions about the impact of Lake Alice on your later life, just in terms of your relationships with your family and friends. What sort of impact has Lake Alice had on your close relationships? In terms of coping with your temper and things that might trigger you?
Well, I reckon that is really, it does spoil my life on that. I find it really hard, because I can remember one staff that's been interviewing me at one time that said that they were trying to stop this treatment like this, or giving it to young kids, as when they grow up that they find it hard to control their temper and all those things. And I do seem to believe it, because that's exactly what I find it hard as well, to control on myself. And I can see it, because it has spoiled my life on that, even on jobs. The jobs that I've been working on, it doesn't seem to last, because of my temper in arguing with the bosses, or like that, when things don't go right on what I'm supposed to do and all those kind of things.
So you've had a number of jobs, but often they've ended quite abruptly as a result of something happening and temper flaring.
Only one job I lasted long with, PDL Plastic, for 11 years.
And even at that job, was there some times while working with packing the plastic bottles that triggered your memories back to Lake Alice?
Yes.
Was that in relation to the static electricity that you used to
Yes.
scoop up the plastic?
Yeah.
I'm now going, sorry.
When I feel that yeah, I couldn't, I'd be really scared in sitting there. What am I going to do on this job? Doing this, I can't even do it. I had to bring to tell my foreman or my job, the boss, to, what the heck is this thing here? This has got the electricity in this dryer. It's a big hole, been drying the powder up. But when you're scooping the powder to bring it in, put it into the machines, that's when you can feel it, that it's like a, but he said, it's nothing, mate. It's only a static electricity.
But
what
to
he
you
said.
it was something.
But to me, it's just like a real electricity.
I'm going to move back to 1977 now. So you had got out of Lake Alice at the end of 1976. But did your mum come to you at that point and say, okay, listen, the government knows about your story?
Yes.
They know about your letters. And what did you think at that stage?
Well, I don't know. They said, well, how did they know? Who told them?
And who was it at that time that wanted to talk to you?
Well, she said that there was a Palangi man that came home with an interpreter, with a Niuean man. But, well, he's the interpreter for... But I didn't know it was Dr. Sutherland.
Right, so
at that time.
the man that wanted to speak with you, the Palangi man, was Oliver Sutherland, who's
Yes.
seated with you today.
Yes, he is.
Did you talk to him? Oliver?
Yeah, when they came back, yes.
And you spoke to him with an interpreter. Was that Mr. Kolo?
Yeah.
When you spoke to Oliver and Mr. Kolo, how did that make you feel as a child at that point, telling these adults what had happened?
Well, it was a relief sometimes.
And did they believe you?
Well, they seemed to.
And once you'd spoken to Oliver and Mr. Kolo, the inquiry, the Mitchell inquiry, was established. Can you remember, were you ever asked to give evidence at that inquiry?
Yes.
Can you remember giving evidence at that inquiry, or was that at a different matter a few years later that you spoke?
I remember giving inquiries before for that. But I might be wrong, I don't know.
I think the notes say that you spoke later on at a court hearing, and that was in
Yeah.
relation to the CCHR.
That one.
But in relation to the Judge Mitchell inquiry
Oh,
in the 70s, you weren't asked to speak there.
okay.
There was a note that, I think there was a note that the judge came to talk to you and your whānau at home, but when I spoke to you, you said you couldn't remember ever meeting Judge Mitchell.
No,
But you can remember meeting Oliver Sutherland
yes.
and Grant Cameron, who was a lawyer who...
Yes, yeah, I remember meeting them.
So Grant Cameron worked with you to seek some redress for your time at Lake Alice.
Yes,
You were given some money, you received a payout,
yes.
but some money was taken away from that as legal fees.
Yes. Well, I didn't know it was legal fees.
Right.
Because I was told that the other half of the money that I think they're putting it away for us for this time when we grow up.
So you didn't know that the money taken out was actually being taken out as a legal fee?
No, not until I saw my statement.
Right. As you were working with the Royal Commission?
Yes.
At around about this time, did you also speak to Justice Gallen?
Yes.
And how did you find that interview? How was he when you spoke with him?
That was all right. It's just the same other.
And when you spoke with Justice Gallen, he talked a bit about Dr. Leeks with you?
Yes.
What would you like to say about Dr. Leeks now? In your statement at paragraph 94, you've made a note about Dr. Leeks. I'm not going to ask you to read that out, but is there a phrase there that you recall Dr. Leeks using in relation to
Yes.
you?
I'll just return that back to him. He's just writing about his own self.
And what is that phrase? What did he call you?
An uncontrollable animal.
And what do you say in reply?
Well, I'll just return it back to him. He's just talking about him, the way he treats us. Because I can see I'm not got nothing to do with this. I'm nowhere near it. It's only one thing that I can see on this, that it's just the way I play up with the kids and that when we're in there.
Now, you've said you received some money as part of the process from the lawyer. And you also received a letter of apology from the government?
Yes.
What would you like to say about that? How did you find that letter of apology when you received it?
I'm thankful for that, for the government to apologise.
I think in your evidence you've said that you would have liked to have got a more personal apology.
Well,
Is that something that you would have liked?
if it can be done, yeah.
In terms of your life after Lake Alice and education, when you got out of Lake Alice, you weren't offered any form of education after that, were you?
No.
Is that something you would have liked to have been offered?
Well, yes.
And some more life skills just to help you get jobs?
Yeah.
What about your Niuean culture? How has the experience of Lake Alice affected your culture? Or
No.
has it hindered anything, or have you felt that you're still able to participate in all Niuean cultural life? You've taught your children your language?
Yes, no, nothing. Just like how you said.
Yeah.
I have taught all my kids, 4 kids, the language as they grow up. And we just communicate on their time. When they want to speak the language, they just talk. We just talk in the Niuean language part.
So Lake Alice hasn't taken that away from you?
No.
Just in conclusion now, Hake, is there anything that you would like to say to the commissioners looking towards the future? I think in your evidence you said if I was told a grandchild of mine had to go to an institution, what would you say?
I just say no.
And why is that?
Like what I don't want them to go through what I've been through, or any other child.
Thank you. Thank you, Hake. I'll just see if the commissioners may have any questions.
Sandra, do you have any questions? Yes, okay, I'll just one thing. I just have one question for you. You got a letter, you got an apology, and I take it was in a letter, was that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what sort of apology would be meaningful to you?
Like I said, I'm just happy I got this one here.
You got that one, yes.
Yeah.
What about somebody speaking to you directly?
I don't really need it.
You don't need that.
No.
You've healed yourself, haven't you? Through your church.
Yeah.
That's good to see. Thank you. I'm going to ask Sandra Ilofivai now.
Yeah. Thank you. Whakalofalahi atu, Hake.
Yeah. Well,
Mike.
I'm not going to ask you any questions about what happened at Lake Alice because you've provided a very full brief. But I do want to just ask you some other questions around your culture and maybe your faith, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hake, you're very strong in your culture, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And do you think that's because that was instilled in you when you were a little baby, a little child growing up by your parents?
Yes.
Yeah, very important. And when you came to New Zealand, was it about 1967 when you first came across?
68.
68. How did you come across?
Come on the ship, but
Was it the Tofua?
yeah, might be that one, yeah.
So you go to Samoa and then you fly over in the plane?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Do you remember how you felt when you knew you were going to come to New Zealand?
Just feel happy and quite sad because leaving the real mum and dad behind and the brothers and sisters like that. But, well, looking forward to meet the other family coming here.
And did you have a big family in New Zealand that you were coming to?
Yes, I have.
So you had lots of other cousins,
Other cousins and
uncles and aunties?
aunties, yes.
Okay. And you said that you couldn't speak English,
No.
which is not unusual, because in Niue, you would have all been speaking Niuean.
Anyway,
Right. So then you come to New Zealand and you come to Ponsonby. Was there a big Pacific or a big Niuean community waiting for your family?
well, yes, I'd say.
There were lots of people coming to New Zealand, lots of Pacific people in the 60s and the 70s, yeah.
Yes.
And Hake, do you remember when you started school, did you have dreams about what you might have wanted to be when you left school?
No,
No.
nothing.
So you were always speaking Niuean in the home
Yeah,
with all of your cousins?
yes.
So you only spoke English when you were outside of the home?
Yeah.
Okay. And did anyone try to help you with the language?
My cousins are there. They're
Okay.
trying to teach me and at that time.
Okay.
But it's still pretty hard the way I see it. Only might be the easy words,
Yeah,
come, go,
Yeah.
or thing like that.
yeah. Because they were just kids too, right? Okay. And then in school, the teachers, what I'm really wanting to understand is the teachers in the schools. Were there other Pacific kids in your school?
Yes,
Okay.
plenty.
Plenty of Pacific kids, and were there other kids who couldn't speak English very well?
I should think so, yes.
Okay. And when you went to Lake Alice and Owairaka, do you remember the ethnicity of the kids that were in those placements?
Mainly, yes, the Pacific and Maori children.
Okay. So the kids were mainly Pacific and Māori
Yeah.
at Owairaka and at Lake Alice.
Lake Alice is quite a big mix.
Okay.
And quite a few Pākehā children, Palangi children, sorry.
Okay. And what about the staff? Do you remember the ethnicity of the staff?
Staff was the Palangis.
Okay.
Cleaners were like the Maoris and things like that.
Okay. But were you ever able to talk to any of them or weren't allowed?
No.
To the Pacific staff, the cleaners and things?
Oh, we communicate with the staff, the cleaners, sorry.
And was that in your language or was...
No. Only just
In
talking,
English.
yeah.
All right. And Hake, about your faith. So faith was very big to your family as well?
Yes, it's
Okay.
a big faith.
Yeah.
I come from a big church-going family. My great-grandfather's a minister, as well as the uncles and families, and got a few ministers in the family.
So you came from a really rich cultural Niuean background and a very strong faith background as well. Yeah.
Yes.
So when you went into Lake Alice and in Owairaka, that was very foreign to you, very different. Yeah,
Yeah.
How did you cope? I know we've asked that, but you talked. How did you manage to stay strong in there?
Just through my faith or whatever.
Okay.
Because I could see there was just like this drawing here. Because I can see that wasn't my doing. It's just something like a supporting from somewhere.
Okay.
From him above, I say. Helping and supporting me.
So your faith, which was instilled by your family, and then the language, you were very clever to do the stick figures with the speech bubbles because your mother was able to respond to the speech bubbles where she couldn't if you
Yeah.
just wrote it in English, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Hake. You've been very, very helpful. it's now fallen to me to thank you. So I just want to say to you in your language, whakau e lahe ke he hau a loto whakamalo mo e mana tuanga. Mo e mai tutakianga e hau a ilo. Whakailo atu he mai tuai singa hau e whakatuloanga a New Zealandi.
Thank you.
He koe hau a whakamooli a loto toa tangata tunga koe.
Yeah.
Koe tau tolu osi ki ono ki ke he aho nei. Ke whakamunuia mai e atua ia koe. Whakau. Yeah. And to your supporters who flank you as very, very strong anchors, Dr. Sullivan, lo whiongatingi lau, lo tuangange ia wheke, e me se lo peleina i lau panga. Whaftai lava.
Yeah,
Malia.
whaftai.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a very appropriate note to end. So thank you very much in English from me and from all of our commissioners for all the efforts you've done. Can I just say this, that this is not the first time you've told your story. You've told it many, many times.
Yes.
But we recognise that, and it can never be easy, but you have done it, and I think you've done it because this time it's in the public eye. And we thank you very much for that. It's very important. Thank you.